Washington and Detroit on Sunday, 425 in Landover. By the way, that line keeps coming down, boys and girls. I see 7.5s and 8s now. This thing was at 9.5 the other day. What does that mean? It means there's a lot of sharp money on Washington. We talked about this yesterday. Why would there be sharp money on Washington? Well, Detroit really got beat up on Sunday by Minnesota. Minnesota's much better than Washington talent-wise, defensively in particular, and better schemed. Brian Flores is first rate as a defensive coordinator. But we had Dan Miller, the longtime play-by-play voice of the Lions, on the show the other day, and he said that they're banged up along the offensive line. They could be missing multiple pieces, and that really hurt Goff, Sunday against a team that really got after him. He didn't throw the ball well. They forced him into a lot of difficult situations. Can Washington, against a banged-up offensive line, generate a pass rush with their banged-up defense? Probably not, but maybe they don't get torched like they did last week. By the way, a friend of mine said, Sheehan, talking about Jaden's playoff game against Detroit, 271 yards of offense in the first half. Remember, Sam Darnold threw for 330 in the first half. Yes, he did. He did. It was not a playoff game, though, and it was against truly a horrible, horrible defensive football team. But Detroit was not a good defensive football team when Washington arrived at Ford Field last January. The lines come down. I think it's Detroit injuries. I think when you come off a game like the one they came off of, where it was physically very much a beatdown, that next week road game, maybe they're overlooking Washington at this point. Maybe, Dan Miller suggested the other day there's not a real revenge factor. They don't feel that. And, if Washington had been good and this would have been a highlighted game, which it was going to be, but now the Rams 49ers in that 425 slot is the highlighted game. But anyway, I can tell you right now, Washington's going to be a smell test selection. Detroit is the most publicly bet team of the football weekend across the board, and yet there's sharp money on Washington. That is a formula for me to go with the dog. So last week I came in here on Friday and I said, wow, I can't believe how good Seattle is. Like, they are really, really good. This is actually a really, really bad matchup. Now, I had the wishful, Jaden's back. Jaden can play. He can do this. We're desperate. Yeah, didn't really matter. This isn't a great matchup for Washington, that's for sure. Not a good matchup at all. I don't think it's quite the matchup last week was, believe it or not, because of Detroit being banged up in their offensive line. But what really stuck out to me as I watched some of Detroit's recent games, even the games in which they've given up some points, to Minnesota and to Kansas City, I think they're really good on defense. I didn't realize this until after I watched a couple of games and I looked it up on DVOA. Right now, they're the third-ranked defense in the NFL per the DVOA metric, behind Houston and guess who? Seattle. Just barely ahead of Denver, the Rams, and Cleveland. They're excellent on defense. Aiden Hutchinson is that guy. In talking to Dan Miller the other day, I asked him, I said, do you guys put him in the TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons class? And he said something that I totally agree with. I think we have to take Myles Garrett out of that conversation. He is at a level that no one else is. He is so far and away the best defensive player in football, and one of the greatest defensive players of this generation, to go along with Aaron Donald, I would say. Myles Garrett, by the way, lock Hall of Famer, first ballot, no matter how bad the teams he played on were. He's just that guy. He's that good. But he said, Dan Miller did, he said, but you definitely have to include him in the Parsons and the TJ Watt, et cetera, category. I agree with that. Aiden Hutchinson got hurt last year. Remember, early in the year, they missed him all year long. He is an absolute terror, drawing penalties, getting sacks. You have to double him. I don't know how, Tunsil and wherever it is, this is a really tough matchup, but there are other stars on their defense. Brian Branch is a star. The second-round pick from Alabama a few years back. He is a star at safety. They don't have Kirby Joseph because truly their safeties as a combo when they're healthy maybe the best combo in the NFL. Jack Campbell, remember when he got picked in the 23 draft, middle of the first round out of Iowa as a linebacker, and they had already picked Jahmyr Gibbs, and people said, what are the Lions doing? You don't take running backs and linebackers in the first round. Well, Jahmyr Gibbs is a star, and Jack Campbell is really, really good. Okay, number 46 is a tackling machine. You cannot stay on him. I just think that I was blown away with how much better they were on defense than I thought they were. By the way, they're fast on defense. They're physical. They are aggressive on defense. They play a lot of man coverage. I mean, it looks like to me, I didn't look up the numbers, I should have, but it looks to me like they basically play man coverage and they rely on their guys to get to the quarterback. We don't have anybody that can beat man coverage. Like last week, it's not hard to see what Minnesota was doing in watching the game. It's like, okay, we understand that they're coming after J.J. McCarthy. We understand that they're going to be playing man coverage across. But we have Justin Jefferson. We have Jordan Addison. We can put the ball up for grabs and let them win one-on-one. This would actually be a game in which if Terry were here, he's such a good contested catch guy, and you give him opportunities in man coverage. You give him the opportunities, and if he can win and he can pull it down and get a couple of big plays, you're off and running. But yeah, I mean, Minnesota, McCarthy only threw for 143 yards, but Jefferson had 6 for 47, including a touchdown in man coverage against zero blitz. And it was on his outside, shoulder. Really good throw by McCarthy. He pulled it in almost with one hand. It was a great catch. And here's the other thing they did, and I'm going to get to my keys in a moment. They ran the football. I mean, Mason and Jones, 19 carries for 114 yards. So they were well over 5 yards per carry. So I think that this is where we start. Overall, by the way, Detroit's, got really good turnover margin. They've got 12 takeaways on the year. They're ball hawks. This is a defensive team that's plays differently than the team they played on Sunday night, but talent-wise is really good. And then, of course, we know what they have offensively, right? With, obviously Amon-Ra, who is an elite-level receiver, Jamison Williams, who is an absolute burner, and then their backs in Gibbs and Montgomery. I mean, Gibbs, I still maintain that as great as Washington was in that game, they would have avoided a lot of those turnovers if they just handed the ball off to Jahmyr Gibbs against Washington's defense last year. He averaged 10 yards per carry in the first half, and he only got 14 carries. It was the first game back, remember, for David Montgomery, and they felt compelled to give him a bunch of carries, which I think was a mistake. All right. Number one, Washington pulls off the upset if they run the football. Detroit's excellent against the run. They're 13th against the run. They're just excellent defensively. But with Mariota and with, the kind of team Washington has where the quarterback can be involved in the run game, key number one, run the football 11 on 11. That means Mariota's got to be a big part of it. Whether it's Bill, whether it's Rodriguez, whether it's McNichols, they have to run the football against Detroit. They certainly have to try to run the football. I just don't know that they can win enough in man coverage, whether they can hold up enough in protection. So to me, their best opportunity is to run the football 11 on 11. This cannot be 9 called pass plays in your first 10, Cliff. More on Cliff in a moment. Run the football 11 on 11. Get it done. Don't shy away from it. And it's got to be with the quarterback, options, designed runs. I think with as much man coverage as Detroit plays, you definitely, especially on these 3rd and 6s, 3rd and 9s, quarterback draw. Don't rely on man beaters, if your guys aren't going to win. In a passing situation on a 3rd and 10, run a quarterback draw with people playing man coverage and having their backs turned. Mariota can run, man. He looks and has looked great running the football. Run QB counters where you've got 10 blocking and the quarterback is involved. That's 11 on 11 football. Quarterback counters, quarterback power, quarterback draws, zone reads. They really are fast defensively, though. I don't know how well some of those read options would really work against Detroit. But keep it on the ground right in front of you. Go after them with 11 on 11 football and don't give up. Worst case, if you don't make a first down, you've run 40 seconds times 2 if you ran the ball twice. So you're shortening the game a little bit. Number 2, after run the football 11 on 11, I think this has got to be a cliff game. And what I mean by that is, A, you've got to, be balanced in this game. You've got to try to run the football. B, you got to scheme some people open in this game. You don't have people on the field Sunday that can win consistently against all the man coverage that Detroit plays. And you don't think Detroit knows that? Like, they will be able to, in any passing situation, play man across the board and come after you. And you didn't hold up against Seattle with your pass pro. You're not going to hold up against this team consistently either. So you got to scheme some stuff up. I mean, I think against man coverage gives you an opportunity to screen them. Bubble screens, traditional screens, running back screens. But you've got to figure out a way specifically. Smarter people, when it comes to football X's and O's would tell you, how to scheme up some guys that can't get open against man coverage to get open. But we've seen guys do it over and over again. We've seen Cliff do it. He didn't do it last week enough, that's for sure. This is a man coverage team, mostly, and they will get after you. So in passing situations, again, I wouldn't shy away against running the football 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, QB draws, or, you run a sweep, and try to get outside against nickel. And run the football. Don't be afraid to run the football on 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. But this is Cliff's game. If they end up having to throw the football, you've got to be able to scheme some people open. And against man coverage versus a lot of zone, harder when they're looking at it, right? Eyes, on quarterback, eyes on receivers. That's a harder screen situation. Man, we should see some screens this week. Number 3, it's really simple. You can't win this game unless Detroit helps out. I know this is cliche, and I know that I've hit on this now for 3 weeks running because of what they have out there on the field. But they've been at a major sort of personnel disadvantage for several weeks running with all of the lost players. You have to rely on the other team this week to self-destruct. Jared Goff did it against us in the playoff game. The Lions did it. They also, threw the wide receiver double pass, which was kind of silly. You need. So I went back and looked at a game that I would consider to be sort of a comp to this game. In 2017, Washington went to Seattle. They were a 9-point dog. They had guys like Brian Quick on the field, Terrell Pryor on the field. They had the week before 3 new offensive linemen in the game where basically they introduced themselves to the team before the Dallas game the week before they were in the game. This was a no-chancer, like a no-chancer. And they pulled it off. If you remember, Kirk hit Brian Quick and then hit Josh Doxson down to the 1-yard line, and they punched it in, and they won shockingly 17-14. I went back and looked at that game. One of the reasons, actually the reason they won that game more than anything else. No, I'm not about to give Kirk all the credit. He was big time when it mattered. But 16 penalties for 138 yards by the Seahawks in that game. 2 turnovers and 16 penalties. You need something like that on Sunday from Detroit. You need them to take themselves off the field because defensively you're not going to have our defense take them off the field. Not that team. I mean, Gibbs, Montgomery, Laporta, Williams, Amon-Ra. I mean, who's going to cover Amon-Ra? Seriously. So you need like one of those games, and it happens in the NFL, and sometimes you go back and you're like, that wasn't really a hold, or that wasn't really offensive, pass interference, or that wasn't really an illegal formation. You need all of that Sunday. I've talked about this the last few weeks that offensively, Washington cannot afford to make mistakes, and they keep making mistakes. 3 penalties on the first 3 drives against the Seahawks. I don't think they were ever going to win that game to begin with, but you had no chance of even making it a game when, you're at their 40 after 2 first downs and you've got a 15-yard face mask on a play that moved the sticks on a 3rd and 2. You can't do that offensively. So you can't self-destruct, and Detroit has to. How about that, by the way? I certainly remember that Seattle game. It was, wow, flukish. It seemed like at the end. I mean, they didn't do much offensively all night, and then they go 80 yards on the final drive. Quick makes this obscene catch, and then Doxson makes maybe the best play of his very short and disappointing first-round pick career in Washington with a contested catch at the 1-yard line. But 16 penalties the Seahawks had in that game. You need Detroit double-digit penalties and 2 to 3 turnovers to win this game. That's it. That's the game right there. Number 1, you've got to run the football 11 on 11 with Mariota being a big part of it. Number 2, Cliff has got to offensively scheme up some people open because they are a man coverage team and they get after the quarterback. And I think quick screens and bubbles and even some traditional screens where you let that rush come in and then it's off to Bill or it's off to, Rodriguez or McNichols, against guys with their backs turned running downfield. He's got to scheme up some stuff because you don't have anybody on the field that can beat man coverage consistently. I mean, they just don't. Who's going to be on the field Sunday? Is Treylon Burks going to wake up and decide, now I'm going to show you why he was a first-round pick? Okay. He's big. Maybe Burks is the guy you take shots with because of his size. Here comes zero coverage. They're coming after it. They're playing man behind it. Give him a shot. Lob one up there down the sideline. See if he can come up with it. You got to make some of those plays. And then lastly, this has to be a game in which you're flawless and Detroit self-destructs. If we get all that, got a shot to win, a 20-17 game late, something like that. It's a lot to ask. I'm not asking for 16 penalties for 138 yards, but how about 10 for 95 yards and 2 turnovers to go with it? With Washington, 4 penalties for 25 yards and 0 turnovers, and 0 drops. The drop thing is not even a thing anymore because it's hard to even get somebody open consistently.